It's another beautiful day for baseball in Los Angeles.
And baseball podcast.
Josh Schaefer and Blake Harris
Cover everything Dodgers right here on Inside the Ravine.
How is it going, everyone? Welcome to a brand new episode of Inside the Ravine. Joining me, as always, my co-host Josh Schaefer, who is taking matters into his own hands. He is now gone into the broadcast booth at the Toyota Arena. For what reason, I'm not sure, but I think it has something to do with what we witnessed last night. So, Josh, you're now recording from where you call games. I don't know if there's a correlation, but you've taken it into your own hands to switch things up for today's show. So, how are things going over there in Ontario this morning?
I've decided to live in exile in my new home, the broadcast booth here at Toyota Arena. So we are getting ready for opening night, and thank goodness it is tomorrow, which is good that hockey is now back after what we saw the other night, because there will be significantly less entertaining baseball for me to watch going forward. But yes, that's new broadcast location here. I would have tried to do it with the ice in the background, but the angle wasn't great. And the booth is still not completely set up yet. But yeah, just kind of not great from the Dodgers recently. And let's dive into it.
Yeah, so we're going to be doing kind of a rapid reaction episode right now. We're going to try to get one very soon where we go kind of more in depth on the series, on Game 3 as a whole, where we can talk more about that. So today is going to be more so just immediate reactions, immediate takeaways from last night's loss, from the series loss. So again, if you want to hear all of our thoughts on a lot of decisions that were made, a lot of things that the Dodgers did or didn't do, that's going to be in a future episode. So it's kind of a tease, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But Josh, we had to get this one out this morning because I don't know, the game ended, I want to say, 13, 14 hours ago, something like that. I thought it might be best to give some time to kind of put my thoughts together a little better, but I'm still in disbelief. I'm in shock. I don't know what we witnessed last night. Luckily for you, you were at the Kings game, so you didn't have to suffer through the entire game, from pitch 1 to pitch 200, however many pitches there were. You got to watch at least, I think the Kings lost 2, right? So you didn't really get to see anything good last night, but the Dodgers season has come to an end. They get swept by the Arizona Diamondbacks 3-0, and the craziest thing, Josh, and this blew my mind, would you like to take a guess as to when the last time the Dodgers got swept in a postseason series was? Because I was not expecting this when I looked up Baseball Reference this morning.
Let's hear it.
2006 in the NLDS against the Mets, in which I was in 5th grade, I believe. You might have been in kindergarten because you're so much younger than me, Josh, but fifth grade was when the Dodgers last got swept. It was in the NLDS to the Mets. I believe that's the series when Paul LaDuca tagged 2 guys out at the plate in one play in New York. So it's been 17 years since the Dodgers got swept in a series. During this entire run, going back to 2013, when the Dodgers have made the playoffs every single year, they've had some pretty bad eliminations, but they've never been swept. They get swept by the 84-win Arizona Diamondbacks. And Josh, I don't know. I mean, we've had some pretty bad postseason exits in years past, but where does this one rank among the worst postseason exits you've seen from this Dodgers team?
I mean, it's got to be up there. What was really bad about the 2022 elimination was it was against the Padres. Obviously, that rivalry was starting to brew a little bit. It seems to have really cooled off now, but it was starting to heat up a little bit. Obviously, the Padres were very vocal about, we just want to beat the Dodgers. Like, we need to slay the dragon from up north, and that was their whole thing going into the season. So that one obviously stung at the time for Dodger fans, but the other thing that made it worse, I don't know if it made it worse or if it made it better at the time. I think it made it worse, but the Padres didn't play very well either. They were just as bad as the Dodgers with runners in scoring position. Offensively, they had the big hits, they had the timely hits. The Dodgers had no hits. So that was the difference last year. But realistically, the statistics between the two teams was not that big of a difference this year. And I mean, no disrespect to the D-backs, because the D-backs were a fun team in the regular season. They were really hot to start the year all the way up until literally the day of the All-Star break. But I still think you look at when you play you know, a 5-game series that really only turns out to be 3 games. That's a small sample size. But when you look at 162 games, you look and you think the Dodgers were the better team, right? And got completely cold. The reason this one stings is not only is it a 3-game sweep, but also it's the fact that the Dodgers went into this series pretty hot. You know, they clinched a long time ago. They had momentum going in. The D-backs sure had won those 2 games against the Brewers, both impressive wins, and the way they did it was impressive. But they ended the regular season as cold as possible, you know. So I think that's another reason why it stings, is because I feel like the D-backs, you know, they steal a lot of bases. They're a fun team to watch. They're up and coming still, I think. But the reason why it stings is because I didn't think the D-backs were going to be that big of a threat for the Dodgers in the postseason. I felt like the Dodgers had no pressure this year. Like I said before, like thought they were going to have a deeper postseason run than last year, even though I didn't think they were going to be as good of a team. And it turned out they were nearly just as good as they were a year ago. But the reason why this one stings so much is because it's another year of, you know, the Stars not getting it done in the postseason, the team completely falling flat, the team having no energy in the postseason, obviously getting swept by a division opponent, but also the way that the starting pitching was with Kershaw, with Bobby Miller. It was all just bad. And like, I don't blame Dave Roberts for it. I think the blame has to be put on the team just didn't get it done. And this one is up there because I think it was the most like gut wrenching of a performance, with the way that all 3 of these games went, with the D-backs just totally scoring in bunches. I mean, 1 inning of runs was all they needed to beat the Dodgers in game 3. So like that's been what's just, I mean, again, first inning of game 2, you take that inning out and Dodgers could win the game. You take out 1 inning in game 3, the Dodgers could win the game despite being how bad offensively they were. So it's like the way that the D-backs scored their runs, the lack of runners on base for the Dodgers, even the lack of quality at bats. I mean, in every facet of the game, the Dodgers were beat. And the only like silver lining in it was that the bullpen was really, really good. But in a way, the D-backs bullpen was just as good. So it's like, what facet of the game did the Dodgers excel at? Or did they excel at more than the D-backs did? None.
Yeah, I mean, I like that you just brought that up because, like you said, the bullpen for the Dodgers was phenomenal. I mean, they were as perfect as they could be, but the D-backs bullpen was just as good, maybe if not better. So like you said, the D-backs were better in every facet of the game. And entering this series, you know, we talked about this. It's something that I wrote about. The only thing that concerned me with the D-backs in the series was going to be what they would do once they got on base. Once they got on base, they'd be stealing. I think they were second in all of baseball in steals. I think I forget where I heard it. Maybe it was on the TBS broadcast that I think the D-backs had exactly the same number of stolen bases as home runs this season. This was a team that didn't hit for power, that didn't really slug, that didn't do anything. And yet, that's how they won the series, Josh. They, I think, out-homered the Dodgers by a significant amount. I think the Dodgers only had 1 homer, which came from JD Martinez, and they just looked like the better offense. So it's the fact that, yeah, their starting pitching was great, their bullpen was great, and it was their offense that was great. And it was just a full-on domination from start to finish. The Dodgers never led in any of the 27 innings. They only had a handful of opportunities where they really even felt like they were in the game. We talked about this in our last episode. The Dodgers never really were in game 1. They were kind of a little in game 2. And then last night, I guess they were kind of in the game when they had the rally late. But for the most part, 85-90% of the series, the D-backs were in control. And yeah, it blows my mind because, again, this was an 84-win team. This was a team that stuck into the playoffs because every other team that was fighting for a wild card spot choked their way out. But they just looked like they were the 100-win team. And now for the Dodgers, this is the 3rd straight postseason exit in which they get bounced by a team that has fewer than 90 wins. The way I perfectly described it, Josh, I don't know how you feel about this, but 2019, when the Dodgers got eliminated by the Nationals, I think that's probably the most painful postseason exit during this run, just because they were 6 outs away. They were up by 2 runs at home. 2022, when they lost to the Padres, that was the most embarrassing, just because I think, given it was a 111-win team, the Dodgers had dominated the Padres all season long, and the way that series kind of just fell apart, I think that was the most embarrassing. But this series, it like wasn't painful like 2019 because I was kind of expecting the Dodgers to lose, especially after game 1 and 2. It wasn't really embarrassing because, like you just said, the D-backs were just the better team. They didn't get out, they didn't lose anything like that. I just think it's the most humiliating, just because again, your offense didn't show up, your starting pitching didn't show up, and you got swept for the first time in 17 years against a team that you were 16 games better than. And I think they beat them 8-5 in the regular season. So I think it's the most humiliating postseason exit out of this entire decade run for the Dodgers.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it was the most frustrating to watch because it was the same thing over and over again. Like the approach was bad at the plate. I mean, you get a runner on and you're facing a guy that's a fly ball pitcher, and on the first pitch, ground out into a double play. I mean, that happened twice last night against a guy whose MO is being a fly ball pitcher. And I don't remember if it was you or somebody else, but somebody texted me like, "We're making this kid look like Roy Halladay out there." Like, I mean,
boy,
just they had their approach at the plate was so bad. And I mean, you look at where the Dodgers rank among all the different teams this year in the postseason. The Dodgers there were 12 teams in the playoffs, right? 12 teams. Right? Is that how many there were? 12?
Yeah.
Yeah. So 12
at this point, yeah, 12. Yeah. Half the league
teams,
almost.
12 teams. The Dodgers finished 8th in runs scored. They finished 9th in hits. They finished 8th in doubles. They didn't have a triple. I mean, you just click on every single stat. The Dodgers had 1 home run. That was 8th, just because a couple teams didn't hit any, and teams that were out in the wild card too. In terms of RBIs, Dodgers were 8th. In walks, they didn't walk at all. In strikeouts, they were bottom 4. In stolen bases, like batting average, they were 12th out of 12 teams. They had no approach at the plate. On base percentage was 10th. Slugging percentage was 9th. OPS was 10th. Like they just offensively were terrible. I mean, absolutely terrible. Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman combined to go 0 for 24?
0 for 21.
0 for 21.
So technically it's 1 for 21, but I'm not counting that hit that Freddie got. It was an infield single that was an error that was ruled a single, so we're not counting it. So 0 for 21, which is
okay. Still, 1 for 21 is just as bad. Like, yeah. I mean, and that just can't happen. And I mean, Mookie said it after the game, like, I didn't do anything to help this team win. And he's right. Like it's just, and it's not only his fault. Somebody else could have picked it up, but like guys like Kike came through. JD Martinez, came through in certain stages. The bullpen came through, but the starting pitching did not get it done. And the offense was the worst I think I've ever seen it.
Yeah. And that's the perfect way to describe it, the perfect way to cut us off, because there is so much that we can get to, Josh. I mean, this could be an episode that goes 2-3 hours where we just hit on each thing, but we don't have time for that now because you're a working man. You got to get ready for the Ontario Reign season opener tomorrow. But like I said at the beginning of the show, this was kind of just a little sample. This was a little appetizer for the main entree that's going to be coming soon. So stay tuned for that because, again, there's a lot to break down. We got to talk about the Dodgers offense, the Dodgers starting pitching. Who's to blame for this? Is Dave Roberts on the hot seat? What decisions were made in Game 3? Where do the Dodgers go moving forward? So there's a lot of different things that we got to talk about still, but again, stay tuned for a future episode. Make sure you guys find us on social media at Inside the Ravine, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all that kind of fun stuff. Josh, before we part with this little appetizer, any quick final thoughts?
Well, because you and I have been trying to work out when we're doing this episode within the next couple of days. So just to get this in while we still can, I'm curious, how far do you think the Arizona Diamondbacks go? Because this is an absolute slugfest between the Braves and the Phillies. I feel like the Phillies have the edge, but then Game 4 is going to happen and the Braves could win and that could change everything. So regardless of who comes out of that series, how, I guess, impressed have you been with the Diamondbacks and how far, I'm not saying, are they going to win the World Series, but like legitimately, what are the Diamondbacks' chances in your opinion?
I think whoever they play, that series is going to be over in 5, and the D-backs are going to lose, where even though the D-backs were the better team than the Dodgers this series, we talked about this. If the Dodgers get a couple hits with runners in scoring position, they win Game 2, they win Game 3. Josh, we said last show, if the Dodgers get 3 hits with runners in scoring position, they win Game 3. They finished with 2. Austin Barnes came up with the chance to be that third hit to cut the lead to 1 or maybe tie the game. He didn't deliver. So, although the D-backs did dominate the 3-game series, this is a series the Dodgers theoretically could be up 2-1 right now if they just make a couple of hits. So, I think the D-backs, they might be able to get a win, but based on how the Phillies are looking right now, or even if if the Phillies win, they're going to be riding hot. They're going to have home field advantage. They're going to be tough to beat. Or if it's the Braves, well, that means they just came, from behind in the series and they're going to have the momentum. So I think, yeah, whoever the D-backs play, I'll give the other team 5. I'll give the D-backs 1 win. But who knows? Maybe I'm wrong and the D-backs sweep and are World Series bound.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's tough to say because I feel like I'm in that boat where I think it's either going to be Phillies or Braves. What's weird, though, the Braves have played 3 games so far this postseason. They've only scored 7 runs. They're down 2-1 in the series. The Phillies and the D-backs have both played 5 games. They've had to because they were in the wild card series. The D-backs have scored 30 runs and hit 13 bombs, which is insane, in 5 games. And the Phillies, also in 5 games, have hit 10 home runs and scored 28 runs. I feel like I would love to see those teams go head-to-head because I feel like the Phillies are the team that has more firepower overall. But the D-backs, man, the D-backs have gotten it done, and it hasn't just been in this series against the Dodgers. They got it done against the Brewers too. So I'm hoping we get a Phillies D-backs series because I think that would be fun. But either way, I think the D-backs will end the postseason in this next round, regardless of who they play. But I think it goes. Yeah, I think it goes. I think it's a pretty deep series.
For the Dodgers' sake, I hope the D-backs put up a fight and they're able to at least look like a competitive team. And they don't get bounced in 4 or 5 games, and you're thinking, man, that's the team we lost to? So, yeah, Phillies D-backs would be fun. But the way Philly's looking right now...
yeah, I mean, the only thing, the trend that we keep seeing before last year was that the team that eliminates the Dodgers wins the World Series. And that obviously didn't happen last year. But this year, I see that not happening again. I just don't... And I mean, no disrespect to the D-backs. I don't think they win the World Series. But I feel like I'd kind of like to see them make a run for it because it would make... I think Dodgers fans would not like it, but I think it would make them maybe feel a little bit better if the D-backs went on a run. But also, I just feel like Dodgers fans would want to see both the Braves and the Phillies go out before the D-backs. I don't know why I have that feeling because those late 2000s series against the Phillies are still fresh in my mind watching those growing up. So I don't know. We'll see what we get from the D-backs.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they're able to do in the next round. So stay tuned for that. Again, stay tuned for our next episode whenever that comes. Make sure you're following us on all social media platforms. Make sure you follow the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the Odyssey app. That way, whenever we post that episode, you guys are going to be notified because there's a lot to say. I got personally a lot to say. That's why I made sure to kind of hold back in this episode because I wanted to save it for that one. I'm sure Josh has a lot he has to say as well. So again, we got a full breakdown of the entire thing coming, whether it's tomorrow, whether it's Saturday, Sunday, Monday, whenever it's coming. Hopefully soon, but stay tuned for that. But for Josh Schaefer, this has been Blake Harris. Thank you guys as always so much for listening. We wish we would have been talking about a freaking win, but hey, there's always next year, Josh, right? There's always next year. Just one win, man. Just one win. Hey, at some point we'll get it, but not this year. So again, we hope you guys enjoy the rest of your week wherever you may be.